I had always thought I was straight. I had dated girls in high school and college, even had a couple of relationships that I thought were serious. So, when I landed my first job out of college, the last thing I expected was for things to change. My boss, Adam, was everything I wasn't: confident, smart, and with this natural charm that made everyone want to be around him. The office had this unspoken reverence for him. When he walked into a room, people paid attention. Adam was a bit older, probably in his mid-30s, with dark hair that he kept neatly styled. He dressed impeccably, always in fitted suits that made him look like he had just stepped out of a magazine. It wasn't like I hadn't noticed him before. Everyone in the office noticed Adam, but I had never really given it much thought beyond admiration. That was until I found out he was gay. It came up casually during a conversation in the break room. I was grabbing a coffee when one of my co-workers, Karen, walked in and started chatting. "Did you hear about Adam?" she asked, glancing over her shoulder as if to make sure no one was listening. "No, what about him?" I replied, not really paying attention. "He's gay," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, like it was some big secret. "He brought his boyfriend to the company gala last year. Didn't you know?" I nearly choked on my coffee. "No, I didn't know," I managed to say, my mind reeling. "Adam, my boss, was gay." It wasn't that I had an issue with it, it just threw me. I had never seen him that way, never even considered it. That revelation sat with me for the rest of the day, distracting me from my work. Every time Adam walked by my desk, I found myself glancing up at him, seeing him in a different light. His confident stride, the way he commanded attention without saying a word, suddenly felt different. I didn't understand what was happening, why I was suddenly so aware of him. A few days passed, and I tried to shake off the weird feelings. But the more I tried to ignore them, the stronger they became. It was confusing. I had always been straight. So why was I now questioning everything because of Adam? One evening, we were working late. Most of the office had gone home, and it was just the two of us in the quiet space. I was hunched over my desk, staring at spreadsheets, when Adam walked over and leaned against the edge of my desk. "Still here?" he asked, his voice soft, almost amused. I looked up, my heart skipping a beat as I met his gaze. "Yeah, just finishing up this report." He nodded, his eyes scanning the papers scattered across my desk. "You work hard," he said, his voice carrying a hint of warmth. "That's a good quality to have." I felt a flush creep up my neck at the compliment. "Thanks," I muttered, suddenly feeling awkward under his gaze. From that night on, something changed. I started noticing more about Adam: the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the way his voice softened when he was genuinely curious what you had to say. It wasn't just admiration anymore, it was something deeper, something I didn't want to acknowledge. One day, we were in a meeting, and I caught myself staring at him, watching the way his hands moved as he gestured, how his voice filled the room with authority. I forced myself to look away, feeling my stomach flip. This was ridiculous. I wasn't supposed to feel like this about my boss, especially not a man. I decided to distance myself, hoping the feelings would go away. I avoided conversations with him that weren't work-related, kept my interactions brief and professional. But it didn't work. If anything, it made things worse. The more I tried to push him away, the more I found myself drawn to him. Then came the company retreat. It was a weekend getaway at a resort, meant to build team morale or whatever excuse they used to justify it. I wasn't looking forward to it, especially since Adam would be there, but there was no way I could avoid it. So I packed my bags and showed up, trying to keep my head down and stay out of his way. The first day was filled with team-building activities and awkward small talk. Adam, as usual, was in the center of everything, charming everyone with his easy smile and quick wit. I stayed on the sidelines, pretending to be more indulged in my phone than in the activities. I couldn't stop stealing glances at him, my heart racing every time our eyes met. That evening, there was a dinner followed by a casual gathering around a bonfire. Most people were laughing, chatting, and enjoying themselves. I found a quiet spot a little away from the group, staring into the flames, trying to sort through the mess of emotions swirling inside me. "Mind if I join you?" Adam's voice broke through my thoughts. I glanced up, surprised to see him standing there, holding a glass of wine. "Sure," I muttered, scooting over to make room for him on the log. He sat down beside me, close enough that our shoulders almost rubbed. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We just watched the fire, the crackling of the wood filling the silence. "It's nice to get away sometimes, isn't it?" he said after a while, his gaze fixed on the flames. "Yeah," I agreed, though my mind was racing. Being close to him like this in the dim light of the fire made my heart pound. I could feel the warmth radiating off his body, the subtle scent of his cologne mixing with the smell of the bonfire. We sat in silence for a bit longer before he turned to me, his eyes searching mine. "Is everything okay?" he asked, his voice gentle. "You've seemed distant lately." I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. How was I supposed to explain this? How could I tell him that I was questioning everything I thought I knew about myself because of him? "It's nothing," I said quickly, looking away. "Just work stress, I guess." He didn't look convinced. He studied me for a moment, then nodded, leaning back slightly. "If you ever need to talk," he said quietly, "I'm here." My chest tightened at his words, the kindness in his voice. I wanted to say something, to tell him what I was feeling. But I was too afraid. Afraid of what it meant, of what he might think. So I just nodded, staring into the flames as my heart thudded in my chest. The rest of the retreat passed in a blur. I avoided him as much as possible, throwing myself into activities and mingling with others to keep my mind occupied. But it didn't help. Every time I caught sight of him, laughing with someone, or talking animatedly, my stomach flipped. It was infuriating. Back at the office, I tried to bury myself in work, thinking that if I just focused hard enough, these feelings would go away. But they didn't. If anything, they grew stronger. And one evening, when everyone else had gone home, I found myself standing outside his office, my heart pounding. I didn't know what I was doing there. I should have just gone home, pretended like this was all in my head. But before I could talk myself out of it, I raised my hand and knocked on his door. "Come in," came his voice from inside. I pushed the door open and stepped inside, feeling my palms sweat. He looked up from his desk, his expression shifting from surprise to curiosity. "Hey," I said, my voice coming out shakier than I had intended. "Can we talk?" He set his pen down and gestured to the chair in front of his desk. "Of course. What's on your mind?" I hesitated, the words sticking in my throat. How was I supposed to say this? How could I explain what I was feeling without sounding like a complete idiot? I started, then stopped, taking a deep breath. "I found out a while ago that that you're gay." His eyes softened and he leaned back in his chair, studying me carefully. "And that bothers you?" he asked, his voice calm, though I could sense a hint of defensiveness. "No," I said quickly, shaking my head. "It's not that. It's just ever since I found out, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. About us." I could feel my face heating up, my heart pounding in my ears. I don't even know what I'm saying. This is all so confusing. He was silent for a moment, his eyes never leaving mine. Then he stood up, walking around the desk to stand in front of me. "You're not the first person to feel confused about this," he said gently. "Attraction isn't always something we can control, and it doesn't always fit into neat categories." I looked up at him, my heart racing. "Then what am I supposed to do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He reached out, his hand brushing against mine. "Maybe," he said softly, "you don't have to do anything right now. Maybe we just see where this goes." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of emotions. We started spending more time together outside of work. Lunches turned into dinners, and soon, we found ourselves stealing moments whenever we could. It wasn't easy, my mind was still grappling with the idea of what this meant for me. But with Adam, it felt natural, like a puzzle piece falling into place. One night, as we sat in his living room, talking about everything and nothing, he looked at me, his eyes filled with warmth. "I want you to know," he said quietly, "that I don't expect anything from you. Whatever you feel, it's valid. And we'll take this as slowly as you need." His words eased the tension that had been building in me. I reached out, taking his hand in mine. "I don't know what this is," I admitted, "but I know that I want to find out. With you." He smiled, squeezing my hand gently. "Then that's all that matters." As months passed, we explored this new territory together. It was a journey of self-discovery, filled with moments of uncertainty and excitement. He was patient, kind, and never pushed me beyond what I was ready for. And as time went on, I realized that this wasn't just a phase or an experiment. It was real. We faced challenges, of course. The whispers at the office when people began to notice how close we had become, the judgment from those who didn't understand. But through it all, we stood by each other. He became my anchor, my confidant, and eventually my love. One evening, as we lay in bed, tangled in each other's arms, I looked at him, my heart swelling with gratitude. "You changed everything for me," I whispered, my voice filled with emotion. "I thought I had my life figured out, and then you came along." He smiled, pressing a soft kiss to my forehead. "Sometimes life has a way of surprising us," he murmured. "And sometimes those surprises are the best things that ever happen." I closed my eyes, feeling the warmth of his embrace. I had thought I was straight, thought I knew exactly who I was. But then I found him, and everything changed. And for the first time, I was exactly where I was meant to be.